Hey guys, I'm T and welcome to the channel. If you're new here, we make trendy and fun crochet tutorials twice a week, and if you haven't already, smash that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe to join in on the fun. Today's tutorial takes cues from the past for a casual polo tee that's both easy on the eyes and easy to make. Speaking of, if you're looking for more no-fuss crochet wearables, you are in the right place. We have hundreds of the easiest to follow crochet tutorials and patterns, with even more dropping twice weekly, so consider clicking the bell to subscribe and you'll never miss an upload. Also, do me a huge favor and give this video a big thumbs up if you like it, or 2 thumbs down if you don't. Either way, it's a great way to show support so I can keep putting out free tutorials every Wednesday and Sunday. Now, it's time to get on the show, so without further ado. For this project, any category 4 yarn will work, but I used a total of 360 grams of yarn. That's 670 yards if you're stateside, and those individual measurements will be on the screen. As for tools, a 5mm hook, scissors, stitch markers, and a tape measure. There is a written pattern down below. Use offer code TCDDIY for a discount off any $9.99 plus order, and enter this week's pattern giveaway by telling us if you prefer online shopping or in person. I really don't like to leave the house, so online it is for me. Details of the giveaway down below. We're using 4 stitches for this project, and they'll be as follows. Chain, slip stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, and double crochet. This tutorial is made for a size small. You can adjust it for your size, and we explain how to in the video, so let's get started. Getting this top started, we're all going to grab our category 4 yarn, our secondary color yarn, and make a slip knot. Then we're all going to grab our 5mm hook, and we're all getting started with our middle detail first. So start off by making an even number chain that reaches from the base of our neck down to where we'd like the bottom of this top to be, keeping in mind that we will have a bottom band as well. I'd like for mine to be just about 14 inches or 36 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 60, and I actually already have mine completed, so I'm just going to be doing a small sample size with you. Now that we have our chain, we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 2. Now that chain 2 doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Now we're going to do a half double crochet row. So starting with the yarn over, we're going to insert our hook into that chain that we blocked off, or the third chain from our hook, starting with 1 half double crochet. So insert, pull through, yarn over, pull through 3. Once more, yarn over, into that following chain, pull through 3, and continue with 1 half double crochet into every chain. We've made our way down with our row 1. Now to get started on row 2, we're all going to chain 2 and flip. Now that chain 2 doesn't actually count as a stitch, that's our turning chain. Then now we're going to be putting 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. So starting with the yarn over. Into the last stitch from our previous row, insert into that back loop, or the loop that's furthest away from us, pull through, yarn over, pull through 3, and once more, yarn over, into that next stitch's back loop, pull through 3. From here, continue with 1 back loop half double crochet into every stitch. And all we're going to do is continue to repeat that back loop half double crochet row with no increases and no decreases until we have a portion that can reach from the side of the base of our neck across our chest to the other side of the base of our neck, ending on an odd number of rows. Now, as you guys can see, I already have mine completed. I have a total of 13 rows. My width is just about 4.5 inches or 11 centimeters. Now from here, we're going to insert our hook into the tail end, and then we're going to get started on our side panel with our primary color. Now we're going to insert our primary color yarn onto our hook, pull through, and start with a chain 1. And our single crochet row is just going to be 1 single crochet into every stitch to reach the end of the row. So just into that same stitch that our chain 1 is in, insert with a single crochet, and again into that following stitch with a single crochet. We're just going to continue doing this to reach the end of the row, and as a really quick tip, we should all have the same amount of stitches as chains that we made for our front panel detail. We've made our way down with our single crochet row. Now we're all going to get started with our first moss stitch row. So what we're going to do is chain 2. That first chain is going to count as our turning chain. That second chain is going to count as a chain, and we're going to flip our work. What we're going to do is skip that first stitch and into the next, insert with a single crochet. Now so far for this row, we should have 2 stitches. That first is our chain space. It's right there. You can't really see it, but it's there. And then the second stitch is our single crochet. Let's do that again. We're going to chain 1, skip a stitch, and into the next with another single crochet. We're going to continue to chain 1, skip a stitch, and single crochet into the next until we all have 2 stitches left. We've made our way down with our row 2, leaving the last 2 stitches. Now we're going to do an increase. So what we're going to do is chain 1, skip that following stitch, which is our second to last, and into the last stitch from our row, it's going to be a single, half double, double crochet. So into that last stitch, insert with a single, same last stitch with a half double, same last stitch with a double crochet. Now this is going to be a 3-row repeat. It's going to be 2 moss stitch rows and a single crochet. So we need to get started on our following moss stitch row. Whenever we're getting started on a moss stitch row, it is always going to start with a chain 2. That first chain counts as a turning chain, second chain counts as a chain. When we have that chain 2, flip our work. And just like our previous row, we are going to skip that first stitch and single crochet into the next, giving us 2 stitches so far for this row. Then again, we're going to chain 1, skip a stitch, which should be our single crochet from our previous row, and single crochet into that following, which should be our chain space. So insert with a single once more, chain 1, skip a stitch, which is our single from our previous row, and single crochet into the next, and continue this to reach the end of the row. We've just made our way all the way down with our second moss stitch row. Our following row is going to be a single crochet row. Like I said, it is going to be a 3-row repeat. So to get that started, we're all going to chain 1, flip our work, put 1 single crochet into every stitch, leaving that last stitch so that we can increase together once more. We've made our way all the way down with our single crochet row, leaving that last stitch. Now remember that that last stitch is going to be a chain space. It can very easily be overlooked, but it is there. And we're going to do the same increase that we did for our previous even number row, which is a single, half, double, double, all into that last stitch. All we're going to do, insert, starting with our single, same stitch with a half double, same stitch with a double, and our neckline is complete for every size. Now what we're all going to do from here, since our neckline is complete, we're now going to make an even number chain that reaches the top of our shoulder. So we're going to be placing the edge of our front panel detail right at the base of our neck, then make our even number chain. I need roughly 3 inches or 8 centimeters, so I went ahead and made a chain 12. Once we have our chain, we are going to block off that last chain and chain 2. That first chain counts as our turning chain. That second chain counts as a chain. Now we're going to do our moss stitch row all the way down. So starting with the 4th chain, we're going to insert with a single. So here's 1, 2, 3 is the one we blocked off, and 4. Into that 4th chain, insert with a single crochet. That should give us our first 2 stitches, which is our chain space and a single. And from here, chain 1, skip a stitch into the next with a single, and we're just going to continue on with our moss stitch row until we reach the end of the row. Our first shoulder row is complete. Our following row is going to be our second moss stitch row, because remember it is a 3-row repeat. So we're going to chain 2, flip our work, skip that first stitch, single crochet into the next, making our way all the way up. Our second moss stitch row is complete, and now from here we're going to do our following row in our 3-row repeat, which is a single crochet row. So chain 1, flip our work, and single crochet into every stitch, making our way back down. So we are back. We have just completed our first 3 rows for our shoulder. Now from here, all we're going to do is continue to repeat these 3 previous rows with no increases and no decreases until we now have a portion that can reach over to the corner of our underarm, making sure that we're placing this middle detail at mid-chest. Then I will meet you guys back right after our second moss stitch row that ends along the bottom, because some of them can end along the top, and then I'll meet you back so that we can complete the front panel together with our underarm. So we are back and my shoulder portion is complete. Now I have a total of 15 rows. My total width is just about 8 inches or 20 centimeters, or my side panel width is roughly 3.5 inches or 9 centimeters. Now from here, we're going to get started on the underarm portion. So we're going to put this up to ourselves, and we're going to be inserting our stitch marker into any even numbered stitch from the top that's nearest to the corner of our underarm. Now I've inserted my stitch marker into the 28th stitch from the top. That's just about 6 inches or 15 centimeters. Now from here, we're going to do our following row, which is a single crochet row for everyone. So just put 1 single crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 3 stitches right before a stitch marker. So we made our way all the way up with our single crochet row, leaving 3 stitches right before our stitch marker. Now from here, we're all going to do a decrease of 3 half double crochets. So starting with the yarn over, we're going to insert our hook into that following stitch, which should be a chain space for everyone. Pull through into that next stitch, which is a single crochet. Pull through and into that last stitch, which is a chain space. Pull through. Should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 loops on our hook. From here, yarn over, pull through 5. Now our following rows are going to be 2 moss stitch rows with no increases and no decreases. So just to get that started together, we're going to chain 2, flip our work. Skip that first stitch, single crochet into the next to reach the end of the row. Then get started on the following moss stitch row, making our way back up, and then I'll meet you guys back so we can do our single crochet row together. So we are back and our first 3 underarm rows are complete. Now from here, it is going to be a 3-row repeat, but since the row repeat is in an odd number of rows, sometimes the single crochet row can end with a decrease, kind of like how our previous one did, or can start with a decrease, like how our following row will. So whenever we're getting started on a single crochet row that starts along the top, we're always going to chain 2 and flip. And all we're going to do is start the row off with a decrease of 3 half doubles. So yarn over, into that first stitch, pull through, next stitch, pull through, next stitch, pull through, yarn over, pull through everything on our hook. Then from here, continue with 1 single crochet into the rest of our stitches. Then from here, the following 2 rows will be 2 moss stitch rows with no increases and no decreases, the same way that our 2 previous moss stitch rows were completed. Then we're just going to continue to repeat our 3 previous rows until we have an underarm portion that can stretch over to mid underarm. But we all must end right after a second moss stitch row, making sure that it ends along the top because we have to have an odd number of underarm rows. Now after that second moss stitch row, I am actually completed with my underarm portion. So I'm going to take this decreased portion apart and do a chain up a 1 and cut because I only need to have 3 rows for my underarm. My underarm portion is complete and now one of our front panels is complete. Now my width for my side panel is just about 4 inches or 8 centimeters. My total width is just about 8.5 inches or 22 centimeters. And now we're just going to repeat everything we did here on the other side. So just making sure that we're inserting our hook into the top corner stitch of our middle detail and repeat everything from our neckline rows to our shoulder rows and underarm. Everything should be exactly the same, and since mine is already completed, I have a total of 12.5 inches or 32 centimeters. Now that we have the entirety of the front panel completed, we can now get started on the back panel. So what we're all going to do getting started on the back panel, we're all going to start by making a chain for the same amount of stitches that we have for our last underarm row. So for those of you that have my numbers, I had a total of 46 stitches. So for my back panel, I will be making a chain of 46. So now that we have our chain, we're all going to get started on our following row, which is going to be a moss stitch row. So we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 2. Now that chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch. That first chain is going to count as our turning chain. That second chain is going to count as our chain. Then we're going to single crochet into the 4th chain from our hook. So here's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Into that 4th chain, go ahead and just insert with a single crochet, giving us the first 2 stitches for this row. Then from here, continue with a chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the next to reach the end of the row. And we're still going to do our 3-row repeat, so do our following moss stitch row as well, and then I'll meet you back to get started on our row 3. So we are back, our first 2 rows are completed. Now our following row, since we are still doing our 3-row repeat, is a single crochet row. So from here, chain 1, flip our work, put 1 single crochet into stitch and chain space, leaving the last one. We made our way up with our row 3. We've left that last stitch and now we're going to do our increase. And just like how we did our front panel, we're going to do a single, half double, double all into that last stitch. So there's my single, into that same last stitch with a half, same last stitch with a double crochet. Now we should have 2 more stitches than our previous row. Now from here, we're just going to continue to do our 3 previous rows for the same amount of underarm rows that we have for the front panel. Now, like I mentioned for the front panel, the single crochet row may end with an increase or may start with an increase. So just like this one ends with an increase. From here, we're going to do our 2 following moss stitch rows with no increases and no decreases. Then that following single crochet row is going to start along the top. Now, my underarm rows are actually completed for my back panel. So we are going to pretend that I just did my 2 following moss stitch rows, and I'm just going to get started on the following single crochet row with you, just as a reference, and then we can move on from there. So like I said, we are pretending that I have done my 2 following moss stitch rows and we're now along the top getting started on our following single crochet row. So getting started on the following single crochet row, since we're along the top, we're all going to chain 3, flip our work, And into that first stitch, start with a double, half double, single. Then 1 single crochet into the rest of our stitches, and every increased row for the underarm portion should have 2 more stitches than the previous row. Then once we have this underarm portion completed, I will meet you guys back, then we can get started on the width of the back panel. So now that our underarm portion is complete for the back panel, we should have all ended along the top. Then what we're going to do is make a chain for the same amount of stitches that we skipped when we got started on the front panel's underarm portion. So for those of you that have my numbers, I skipped a total of 28 stitches. So from where we're at, I made a chain 28. Then from here, all we're going to do is continue on with our 3-row repeat. So that's 2 moss stitch rows and 1 single crochet row with absolutely no increases and no decreases working our way across our back until we have roughly the same width from our front panel's first shoulder row all the way across to our last shoulder row, making sure that we all end right after our second moss stitch row that ends along the bottom. Then I'll meet you guys back so we can finish up our underarm together from there. So we are back. We have made our way all the way across with the width of our back panel. Now I have a total of 50 rows. Now this width is just about 11.5 inches or 29 centimeters. Now we're going to finish up with the same underarm portion that we did for the front panel. So just to talk you guys through it, go ahead and insert your stitch marker into the same amount of stitches that you insert into for the front panel. Then do the same amount of underarm rows that we have for the front panel or for the beginning of the back panel, should be the same. Once we have that, do a chain up of 1 and cut. So now that both our front and back panel are completed, we're ready to seam everything together. So we're going to start by placing our front panel on top of our back panel and insert our hook into the top corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. We're going to pull our working yarn through using our secondary color just to make sure it matches and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Now we're going to do a single crochet seam, putting 1 single crochet into every side row within the front and the back panel at the same time. So finding our first side row, this is mine right here. I'm going to find that top loop and insert. Find that same side row within the back panel, find that top loop and insert with a single crochet. Let's do that again. Next side row within the front, insert into that top loop. Next side row within the back, find that top loop and insert and single crochet. From here, continue with 1 single crochet into every side row, working in through both the front and back panel. When we don't have any more side rows left to work into, do a chain up of 1 and cut and repeat on the other side. So now that our shoulders are all seamed up, we're now ready to seam up the sides. So that's going to be fairly simple. We're going to make sure that our work is still flipped wrong side out, meaning the seams that we did for the shoulders is still along the outside. Then insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. We're going to pull through and do a chain up of 1 to secure and just do a single crochet seam. So finding that first stitch into the front panel, insert, first stitch into the back panel, insert, and single crochet. Let's do that again. First stitch into the front, first stitch into the back, and single crochet, and that's it. We're going to continue doing this until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut and repeat on the other side. So we are back. We have just completed seaming everything up together, and now we're going to get started on our sleeve. So first things first, we're going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Then inserting our hook into any stitch that we have that's nearest to our side seam. Within the armhole, we're going to insert our yarn onto our hook and pull through. Once when we've pulled through, we're all going to do a chain up of 1 to secure and start with 1 single crochet into every side row. So just to show you guys, this is my first side row right here. I'm going to find that top loop and insert, starting with just 1 single crochet. This is my following, find that top loop, insert with just 1, and continue with 1 single crochet into every side row. Then from here, put 1 single crochet into every stitch, making our way all the way up until we're worked into that last stitch right before our shoulder seam. So now that we've made our way all the way up, worked into that last stitch that we have right before our shoulder seam, we're going to insert our stitch marker into that last stitch. Then we're going to do the same thing, working our way back down, putting 1 single crochet into every stitch, 1 single crochet into every side row, but into that following stitch on the other side of our shoulder seam, we're all going to insert our stitch marker into there so we know where our 2 middle stitches are. So there's my single crochet. I'm going to insert in through there and continue on with this to reach the end of the row. Then slip stitch into that chain space. So we are back. Our single crochet row is complete. Now from here, we're all going to make an even number chain the length that we'd like for our sleeve to be, keeping in mind that we will have a little bottom band as well. So I'd like for my sleeve to be just about 1 inch or 2 centimeters. So I'm going to start by making a chain 4. Now we're going to get started on our first row in our 3-row repeat, which our 3-row repeat is going to be the same as the body, and we're starting with a single crochet. start by blocking off that last chain and do a chain 1. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, we're all going to insert with a single crochet, and from here continue with 1 single crochet into every chain, leaving the last one. So we've made our way all the way down with our single crochet row, leaving that last chain. Into that last chain, we are going to do our increase, and that increase is going to be a single, half double, and double, all into that last chain. So we have just completed our increase. Now from here, we're going to slip stitch it into the base. So finding that next available stitch into the base, we're all going to insert with a slip stitch. Now that slip stitch into the base doesn't actually count as a stitch. From here, we do need to work our way up to the following row. So finding that next available stitch into the base, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. None of those slip stitches into the base don't count as a stitch. It's just to connect. Then our following row is going to be a moss stitch row. So whenever we're getting started on our moss stitch row and we are along the base, we're always going to start it with a chain 1 and flip. Then from here, we are going to skip that first stitch from our previous row, making sure we're not working into any of those slip stitches into the base. So skip that first stitch and into the next. Insert with a single crochet. Then do our normal moss stitches till you reach the end of the row. So chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the next. And since I'm here, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the next. And now my row 2 is complete. Now our row 3 is going to be another moss stitch row. So we're going to chain 2. Whenever we're getting started on a moss stitch row and we're along the outer edge, it's going to start with a chain 2. That first chain is going to count as our turning chain. Second chain is going to count as a chain and flip our work. Then we're going to moss stitch back down. So skipping that first stitch into the next with a single crochet, remembering that that gives us our first 2 stitches, which is that first chain space and single crochet. Then again, chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the next to reach the end of the row. So we're back and our first 3 rows are completed. Now we're going to connect it into the base again. So same way we did our previous row, finding that next available stitch into the base, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. That slip stitch doesn't count as a stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base and flip. Now just as a really quick tip, it is going to be a 3-row repeat, but just like how we did for the body, sometimes the single crochet row can end on an increase or it can start with an increase. So this following single crochet row is going to start with an increase. So I'm going to show you guys how we're going to get that started. Now whenever we're along the base, starting the row off with our single crochet row, we're always going to do an increase, which is going to be a double, half double, single. So yarn over into that first stitch with a double, same first stitch with a half, and same first stitch with a single, then continue with 1 single crochet into the rest of our stitches. Everyone's row 4 is complete. Our following row is going to be a moss stitch row. So since we're along the outer edge, chain 2, flip our work, and do our moss stitch all the way down. Now our first 5 rows are complete. Now just to get started on the following row, slip stitch into that next available stitch into the base, slip stitch into that next stitch into the base to work our way up to the following row, flip our work, and for our row 6, we're all going to chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet into the next to reach the end of the row. Now from here, it is going to be a repeat of our 6 previous rows, making our way all the way up until we work into our first stitch marker stitch. Once we are, I will meet you guys back. So we are back and we've made our way all the way up, working into our first stitch marker stitch. Now from here, we are going to basically repeat everything we did here, but instead of increases for our single crochet rows, we're now going to be doing decreases. And the following row may be a little bit different for everyone, so I'm just going to talk you guys through it. What we're going to do is simply mirror everything we have on this side, going down the other side. So for everyone, take a look at your last row. Then we're just going to continue to work our way back, doing the same rows until we reach our following single crochet row. So as an example, my last row that's worked into my stitch marker stitch is actually a single crochet row. So my following row is going to be a single crochet row that starts with a decrease since I ended along the base. But if your last row was your first moss stitch row or your second moss stitch row, that is completely fine. You're just going to do those following moss stitch rows until you find your next single crochet row, and then I will meet everyone back. Now my following row is going to be a single crochet row that starts along the base, so I'm going to slip stitch into that following stitch in the base and show you how we're going to get started on the following single crochet row that starts along the base. So whenever we're doing a single crochet row that starts along the base, we're always going to start it with a decrease of 3 half doubles. So yarn over into that first stitch, insert, pull through, next, pull through, next, pull through, yarn over, pull through everything on our hook. Then continue with one single crochet into the rest of our stitches. Now it is still going to be the same 3-row repeat, so after this row I will be doing my 2 following moss stitch rows, then I'll meet you back to do the following single crochet row, and then we can finish up from there. So my following 2 moss stitch rows are complete. We're now along the outer edge, ready to get started on our following single crochet row. So what we're going to do is chain 1, flip our work. Put 1 single crochet into every stitch, leaving the last 3 stitches. So we've made our way down with our single crochets, leaving the last 3 stitches. Now all we're going to do is a decrease of 3 half doubles. So yarn over into that third to last, pull through, second to last, pull through, last, pull through, yarn over, pull through everything, and connect it into the base the same way that we've been doing this entire time. From here, continue to repeat our 6 previous rows until we don't have any more stitches left to work into. Then I'll meet you back so we can seam it all together. So we are back. We have just made our way down with our decreased side of our sleeve. We don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're going to seam it together. Now, since it is the same seam as our side seam, I have actually already went ahead and gotten mine completed. So what we're going to do, just to talk you guys through it, is to make sure that our work is flipped wrong side out and do our same single crochet seam till we don't have any more stitches left to work into. We should all end along the base, so do a chain up 1 and cut, and now we're going to get started on the detail. So first things first, we're going to make sure that our work is flipped right side up, right side out. Then insert our hook into any one of the side rows along the edge of our sleeve. Then inserting our primary color yarn onto our hook, we're all going to do a single crochet row. So this is going to be pretty simple. We're going to pull our working yarn through and do a chain up of 1 to secure. Then simply put 1 single crochet into every side row. So start by finding that first side row, insert with a single crochet. That next side row, insert with another, and that's it. We're going to continue doing this, making our way all the way around. And just as a really quick tip, we should all have the same amount of stitches as rows that we have for our sleeve. Then once we made our way all the way around, slip stitch into that chain space, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then go ahead and get your secondary color yarn ready. So our first single crochet row with our primary color yarn is complete. We did do a chain up of 1 and cut. Now from here we're going to do another single crochet row using our secondary color yarn. So this is going to be pretty simple. Making sure the work is still flipped right side out, right side up, insert your hook into any stitch that we have along the bottom of our sleeve, and using our secondary color yarn, do a single crochet row, just putting 1 single crochet into every stitch. Then I'll meet you back. So our single crochet row with our secondary color yarn is complete. We're actually going to be doing 1 more. So right after we've slip stitched into that chain space, we're all going to chain 1, and working in the same direction as our previous row, put 1 back loop single crochet into every stitch just for a little bit of texture. Then when we made our way all the way around, slip stitch into that chain space, do a chain up of 1 and cut. Then I'll meet you back with our primary color yarn to get started on the cuff. So we are back. We have just completed our back loop single crochet row with our secondary color yarn. We did do a chain up of 1 and cut, and now we're going to get started on the cuff. So using our primary color yarn, we're going to insert our hook into any one of the stitches that we have along the bottom of our sleeve and start with just a single crochet row. So super simple, 1 single crochet into every stitch, slip stitch into that chain space, then I'll meet you back. So we are back. We've made our way all the way around with our single crochet row with our primary color yarn. Now, right after we've slip stitched into that chain space, we're all going to make a chain the length that we'd like for the cuff to be. I'd like for mine to be just about 1 inch or 2 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 4. Now that we have our chain, we're all going to block off that last chain and do a chain 1. Into that chain that we blocked off, or the second chain from our hook, insert with a slip stitch. So insert, pull through everything on our hook. Again, into that next stitch, insert, yarn over, pull through everything on our hook. And continue with 1 slip stitch into every chain, but we do want to make sure that we're not tugging too tightly after every stitch, otherwise the following row will be too tight to work into. Now that we've put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch, we're going to connect it into the base. So finding that next available stitch, we're going to insert with a slip stitch. That slip stitch doesn't actually count as a stitch. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base. Still doesn't count as a stitch. Flip our work. Then put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. So just finding that first available stitch from our previous row, not worked into any of those slip stitches into the base, we're going to insert into that back loop, yarn over, and gently pull through everything. Again, next stitch is back loop, yarn over, pull through everything, and continue with 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch. Then at the end of the row, chain 1, flip our work, and put 1 back loop slip stitch into every stitch again, and I'll meet you back at the end of our row 3. We are all now at the end of our row 3. So from here, we're just going to slip stitch it into the base the same way that we've been doing. So just finding that next available stitch, insert with a slip stitch to complete our row 3. Then since we're here, just to work our way up to our row 4, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base, flip our work and put one back loop slip stitch into every stitch, and that's it. From here, continue to repeat those 2 previous rows with no increases and no decreases, making our way all the way around. When we don't have any more stitches left to work into, I'll meet you back so we can seam it up together. So we're back. We've made our way all the way around with our back loop slip stitch rows. We don't have any more stitches left to work into, so now we're going to seam it together. Now this seam is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam. So we're going to make sure that our work is flipped right side out, right side up. Then insert our hook into the corner stitch of both the front and the back panel. Then we're going to yarn over, pull through, do a chain up of 1 to secure, and now we're all going to do an outside loop slip stitch seam. So taking a look at the first available stitch into the front panel, we're going to insert only into that front loop. Then that first available stitch into the back panel, insert only into that back loop. Then we're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops on our hook. Again, next stitch into the front panel, insert only into that front loop. Next stitch into the back panel, insert only into that back loop. Then yarn over, pull through everything, and we're just going to continue doing this till we don't have any more stitches left to work into. When we don't, do a chain up 1 and cut and repeat on the other side. Alright, so now that our sleeves are completed, the next thing we're going to do is our collar. So first things first, we're going to make sure the work is flipped right side out, right side up. Then insert our hook into any one of the side rows or stitches that we have within the neckline. And first, starting with our primary color yarn, we are going to make sure that we're inserting our hook into our primary color first. Start with a single crochet row until we reach our secondary color yarn. So just do the first few. So since I inserted my hook into my neckline right where my stitches are, I will be putting 1 single crochet into every stitch, then 1 single crochet into every side row, and I'll meet you back once we work our last single crochet into the side row that's right before our secondary color portion. So I've made my way down with my single crochets, and I've worked my last single crochet into the side row that we have that's right before my secondary color section within the front panel. Now what we're going to do from here is switch out to our secondary color and do a single crochet row on top of our half double crochets, but we are going to need to find our middle row first. So since we all should have had an odd number of rows for our middle detail, we should all have just 1 middle row. Mine was the 7th. Then from here, we're going to switch out to our secondary color yarn. So what we're all going to do from here is take out that last single crochet with our primary color yarn because we are going to incorporate the secondary color yarn as well. So we're going to start that following single crochet into that same last side row with our primary color yarn, but we're not going to yarn over and pull through the last 2 loops. So start with inserting your hook into the top of that last side row, yarn over, and pull through. From here, we would normally yarn over and pull through 2, but now we're going to yarn over with our secondary color yarn. So simply place that over the hook. We're going to pull through, and now the top of this single crochet is with our secondary color yarn, and now we're going to tie our 2 tail ends together and cut our primary color yarn. Now that our 2 tail ends are cut and tied, we are now going to alternate between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side half double crochet row with our secondary color yarn. So finding that first side row, insert with just 1 single crochet. Then finding our following side row, insert with 2 single crochets. So there is 1 into that same top loop with a second. Just to do this once more, this is my following side row, insert with 1, following side row, insert with 2. Now we're going to continue alternating between 1 to 2 single crochets into every side row, working into the top of the half double crochet portion. Once we reach our middle row, we do want to make sure that we're inserting a stitch marker into the top of that stitch because we do need to know where that middle stitch is. Now once we reach our primary color yarn, we're going to switch out our colors the same way that we just did together, then continue with 1 single crochet into every side row, 1 single crochet into every stitch, and make your way all the way around with our primary color yarn. Once we made our way all the way around, slip stitch into that chain space and do a chain up of 1 and cut, but really quickly this single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch. So when this portion is completed, try your piece on, making sure that everything is fitting nicely. If it's a little bit too tight, redo some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, redo some stitches with a tighter grip. So we are back. Our single crochet row along our neckline is complete. Now what we're all going to do from here is our collar, so making sure the work is still flipped right side out, we're going to insert our hook into our stitch marker stitch. Then we're going to insert our primary color yarn onto our hook, pull through, and start by making a chain the length that we'd like for the collar to be. I'd like for mine to be roughly 2 inches or 5 centimeters, so I'm going to start by making a chain 10. Now that we have our chain, we're going to block off that last chain and do a chain 2. That chain 2 doesn't count as a stitch, that's our turning chain, then put 1 half double crochet into every chain. So starting with the yarn over, into that chain that we blocked off, or the third chain from our hook, we're going to insert, pull through, yarn over, pull through 3, and continue with 1 half double crochet into every chain. So now that we have made our way all the way down with our half double crochet row, we're going to slip stitch it into the base. So just working our way up our neckline, find that next available stitch, insert in through there. Now that slip stitch doesn't actually count as a stitch. That is just to connect. Then to work our way up to the following row, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base. Still doesn't count as a stitch. Flip our work and put 1 half double crochet into every stitch. So starting with the yarn over, into that first stitch from our previous row, not into any of those slip stitches into the base, insert with a half double crochet and continue with 1 half double crochet into every stitch. At the end of the row, chain 2, flip our work, put 1 half double crochet into every stitch again, and I'll meet you back at the end of our row 3. We're now at the end of our row 3. We're now going to slip stitch it into the base the same way that we just did. So into that next available stitch, insert with a slip stitch, doesn't count as a stitch, and since we're here, slip stitch into that following stitch into the base, flip our work, and again, 1 half double crochet into every stitch. From here, we're just going to continue to do our half double crochet rows with no increases and no decreases, making our way all the way around until we're worked into our stitch marker stitch again. Once we are, do a chain up of 1 and cut, and then I will meet you back. We are back. We've made our way all the way around with our collar. Now we're going to get started with our bottom band. So the bottom band is going to be kind of a combination between the collar and the cuff. So getting this started, we're going to make sure the work is flipped right side out, right side up, and start by inserting our hook into any one of the side rows that we have into our primary color section. Then into the primary color section, we are going to be putting 1 single crochet into every side row. Once we reach our secondary color section, we are going to switch out to our secondary color yarn again. Then again, just like how we did for the collar, alternate between 1 to 2 single crochet into every side row. Then once we reach our primary color section again, switch out our colors, then continue with 1 single crochet into every side row, making our way all the way around. Once we made our way all the way around, slip stitch into that chain space and do a chain up of 1 and cut. And again, that single crochet row is going to be as wide as this portion can stretch. So once when it's completed, try our piece on. If it's a little too tight, we do some stitches with a looser grip, or if it's too loose, we do some stitches with a tighter grip, and then I'll meet you back. So now that we have made our way around with our first single crochet row, this is the row where we switched out our colors, we're going to be doing 2 more single crochet rows with our secondary color yarn. So right after we did a chain up of 1 and cut, we're going to insert our hook into any one of the stitches that we have, and with our secondary color yarn, start with a single crochet row, slip stitch into that chain space, then working in the same direction, 1 back loop single crochet row, then do a chain up of 1 and cut. Then I'll meet you back. So now that our single crochet and back loop single crochet row are completed, we're going to get started on the length of our band, but we do need to do a single crochet row with our primary color yarn first. So right after we did a cut, we're going to insert our hook into any one of the stitches and just do a single crochet row, making our way all the way around with our primary color yarn. Then I'll meet you back. So now that our single crochet row is complete with our primary color yarn, we're now going to do back loop slip stitch rows exactly the same way that we did the cuffs. So right after we've slip stitched into that chain space, we're all going to make a chain the length that we'd like for the bottom band to be. I'd like for mine to be just about 2 inches or 5 centimeters. So I'm going to start by making a chain 10, then do our same back loop slip stitch rows, making our way all the way around with no increases and no decreases. Then I will meet you guys back so we can seam it all together. We are back and my bottom band is complete. Now the last we're going to do is our seam, and this is going to be an outside loop slip stitch seam, so the same seam that we did for the cuff. So just to talk you guys through it, making sure the work is still flipped right side out, right side up, we're going to insert our hook into the corner stitches, then do the same outside loop slip stitch seam till we don't have any more stitches left. When we don't, do a chain up of 1 and cut. We are back and we are all finished. Now the last thing we have to do is just weave in all of our ends. And there you have it, y'all. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Join us on Instagram, Pinterest, or Twitter. Those links are down below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Catch you on the next one. Bye!